Well, it's the most important of his campaign. That's what many are calling Barack Obama's speech this afternoon. He addressed the role of race in our nation's history, this presidential campaign. The racist, inflammatory remarks of Reverend Jeremiah Wright, Obama's friend and pastor and spiritual advisor for the last 20 years. So here's the point tonight. The point is, I believe that the Reverend Wright's comments are anti-American and racist, period. There's no amount of explaining that can change his hateful thoughts expressed in his own words. And here are just a few.
Barack knows what it means to be a black man living in a country and a culture that is controlled by rich white people. And Hillary ain't never been called a God bless America. No. Not God bless America. God damn America. Hillary never had to worry about being pulled over in her car as a black man driving in the wrong. I am sick of Negroes who just do not get it. Hillary has never had her people defined as non-persons. Hillary was not a black boy raised in a single-parent home. Barack was. Hillary never had a cab whiz past her and not pick her up because her skin was the wrong color. A poor black man in a country and a culture that is controlled by and run by rich white people. He taught me, Jesus did, how to love my enemies.
I think he's implying there that his enemies are the rich white man. I'm not sure, though. Now here is Obama.
The remarks that have caused this recent firestorm weren't simply controversial. They weren't simply a religious leader's efforts to speak out against perceived injustice. Instead, they expressed a profoundly distorted view of this country, a view that sees white racism as endemic and that elevates what is wrong with America above all that we know is right with America.
Okay, that's all well and good, Barack, but your former pastor embraced Louis Farrakhan, possibly the most anti-white, anti-Semitic man in America. You say that the Reverend has a profoundly distorted view of America. Well, I agree with you. Unfortunately, it seems like he's not alone. May I play some videotape that maybe you haven't seen, Mr. Obama? It's your wife, Michelle, and her own profoundly distorted view of America.
And let me tell you something. For the first time in my adult lifetime, I'm really proud of my country.
Okay. She explained that away later. I no longer believe that explanation. And you know what? I'm sorry, Senator, but I'm not buying your bullcrap either. I'm disappointed. You know, I thought you were one guy who would tell it like it is. I don't think you are. Maybe you didn't know what your wife was saying, because I'm going to cut you slack. A lot of us don't listen to our wife. You know what I'm saying? But maybe you need to go out on a listening tour with Hillary. You know, you should be listening to your closest advisors, because apparently you're the last one to know about their profoundly distorted views of America. I say Barack Obama is guilty of exactly in what some of the Reverend's camp have charged people like me doing. And that's cherry-picking moments from Reverend Wright's speeches that don't represent the whole man or his whole point of view. Well, Barack Obama, I'm glad you can cherry-pick the sweet memories of Reverend Wright and how he was when he gave you and your wife the wedding and baptized your kids. However, I don't believe you can deny that the views expressed in these sermons represent opinions shaped over 20 years. No one can say these things this often and still be considered a rational, tolerant person that should have access as a spiritual advisor to the guy who might be sitting in the Oval Office. No one can say that 9/11 was a wake-up call for white America in a church of all places and still be seen as anything else but a hate monger and a bigot. So tonight, here's what you need to know. Barack Obama says that his leading spiritual advisor has a profoundly distorted view of America. But those disgusting views don't represent the sum of who Reverend Wright is. Well, here's my question. When I see the infamously anti-gay Westboro Baptist Church, when they're protesting the funeral of a fallen soldier with signs that say God hates fags, they do it over and over and over again. I I don't stick around to hear the rest of their message. Should I? I mean, I don't check out their bake sale. I just stopped listening. Obama had 20 years to listen to what the Reverend Wright had to say. He should have stopped listening a long time ago. Hate is hate. John Ridley, political commentator for NPR and Esquire magazine, and Amy Holmes is a CNN political analyst. John, let me start with you. I want to play a clip from Barack Obama's speech today where he's talking about the Reverend Wright and the things that he has brought to his community and the great things that his church does. Watch this.
That serves the community by doing God's work here on earth, by housing the homeless, ministering to the needy, providing daycare services and scholarships and prison ministries, and reaching out to those suffering from HIV/AIDS.
Okay. Now, he says this, and you think, oh, well, that's nice. He seems like a nice guy. However, they're selling these DVDs of his sermons. So, and this has been widely reported. This is what the Reverend has said about HIV and AIDS, and I quote, "The government lied about inventing the HIV virus as a means of genocide against people of color." How do you possibly associate yourself in any way with someone who believes the government invented the AIDS virus to kill African Americans?
Glenn, I can't defend that comment, and I wouldn't even try to defend that comment, but I don't know that you can make blanket statements about Pastor Wright or about Barack Obama for being there. I mean, look, Ronald Reagan said that AIDS was a judgment from God, and you didn't see Republicans abdicate him.
Good God Almighty, John! You're not throwing a 1982 quote at the beginning of the AIDS virus. You're not throwing 1980s quote at me against a quote that has come in recent days, in recent times.
You're asking me, Glenn, if people are going to judge somebody by a statement. So I'm talking about the President of the United States, and you're talking about a guy who's still running for the job. So, no, I said, Glenn, I'm not going to defend that statement. I don't believe it. I'm not a person who's going to say, GD America. But if you're talking about people abdicating individuals on statements, I mean, look, you want a more recent statement? Bill Bennett saying something like, if you want to take a bite out of crime, abort all black babies. Again, I don't think Bill Bennett is a horrible person. I think it's a matter of context.
It's absolutely unbelievable.
Me, Glenn?
It's unbelievable to me that people, I mean, that quote on Bill Bennett has been used over and over again to destroy him, to destroy the man. Yet you can say things like, the government invented AIDS to kill African Americans. You can say things like 9/11 was a wake-up call to white America, that it's the U.S. KK of A, and yet this guy is still being considered as a reasonable person that Barack Obama can hang out with. Amy, let me switch. Let me go back to another piece of tape from Barack Obama. Go ahead and roll this, please.
Instead, they expressed a profoundly distorted view of this country, a view that sees white racism as endemic and that elevates what is wrong with America above all that we know is right with America, a view that sees the conflicts in the Middle East as rooted primarily in the actions of stalwart allies like Israel, instead of emanating from the perverse and hateful ideologies of radical Islam.
Okay. Let's just look at what he said, Amy, and help me out. He said that this reverend sees white racism as endemic. He also sees that the problem in the Middle East is with the Jews, not with the extremist Muslims. Do you stay for 20 years in a pew at this man's church?
Well, Glenn, that's the problem, and that's what this speech failed to answer, which is if you have a man who you claim to be one of your closest mentors, someone who's really shaped your thinking, brought you to your faith, that has been a close friend, and he said someone like a family member for 20 years. Now, that's a family member by choice. And yet he said these things which you say are profoundly, profoundly wrong and distorting of the American culture and of of your fellow Americans, your fellow citizens. How do you reconcile that? I don't think that he did. And I think that it would have, I think, been more of an act of courage if he said, you know what, I did stand up at my church and I did tell my pastor, why are you making these remarks? They're undermining of the black community. These are, to think that America, the government created HIV/AIDS to be proffering that slander, to be spreading that slander. It's not only negative towards bad for the America and for your fellow citizens, but for African Americans in terms of how do we then solve this problem. If you think the cause of it is something that's totally wrong, then how do you come to a solution? Barack Obama has not explained that he at any point in 20 years sat in the pews and did try to fight against some of these things that he says are profoundly wrong.
Okay. Guys, I have to run. I've got to cut it, but I think this could be the speech or the implosion that would be the only thing that could have stopped Barack Obama. I think this is a mess that is only going to get bigger. Thanks. We'll be back in a minute.